All right, good morning and welcome back to Daybreak on the 16th day of June 2020. And I want to take a look at some of the stories that are following up for you today. Of course, this is the big day or the first big day in a series of many for Governor of Kirinyaga, Anne Waiguru, because we understand that the Senate Assembly is this afternoon expected to consider some names of members of a committee that are being proposed to be in a position to hear the impeachment trial of the governor. Of course, she was impeached last week by the County Assembly of Kirinyaga, so today we expect the Senate to make a resolution on how that should be done, whether it should be through a committee or through plenary. We're also following up on the story of Samburu graft purge, where we know that EACC is expected to arraign 3 officials for flouting procurement laws in that county. The suspects were arrested yesterday by EACC officials upon approval by the DPP, that is the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the suspects are believed to have defrauded the Samburu County Assembly of 8.4 million shillings. Also today we are focusing on the story of the International Day of the African Child. Of course, this is a day that aims at raising the awareness for situations of children in Africa, and of course many are encouraged to give something to an African child, and the theme for this year is access to a child-friendly justice system in Africa. So we'll be having a conversation later on with Senator by the name Isaac Maura later on the show, just to highlight on some of the gains that we've made in as far as this is concerned. So first, let's take a look at some of the slides that we have in as far as the graft purge in Samburu County. Like I told you yesterday, the EACC arrested some 3 officials. They want to bring you to bring to your attention the names of those officials that were arrested yesterday upon approval by the DPP. Ruben Maruben is the Chief Officer in the Department of Agriculture in Samburu. Daniel Lenol Kirina is the Chief Officer, Finance Department, and Geoffrey Maroon is the Head of Procurement at the same county. And these are some of the issues that are the allegations. There is a question of a tender for the supply and delivery of 2 tractors and 2 plows that was valued at 8.4 million shillings. And the tender was awarded to CMC Motors Group Limited. And the allegations are that they sort of defrauded the government of Samburu because the officials failed, according to the allegations, they failed to comply with procurement laws, and that they fraudulently misrepresented facts to influence tender award. And also the suspects now are to be arraigned in Isiolo, that is today, to ensure that that matter begins. Now, let us focus on the food security in the country. And we know that for sure, so far we have had a lot of complications in especially at the Horn of Africa, because there's the question of the locusts that have invaded parts of the Horn of African countries. We also know the perennial drought and also the flooding that has been experienced. So joining us this morning to talk about this is Dr. Dennis Kitere, who is the Executive Director of the African Technology Foundation, African Agricultural Technology Foundation. Good morning, Dr. And let me just start by asking how the coronavirus pandemic has affected your operations as an institution in this part of the continent.
Yeah, as you know, this coronavirus, the disease when it came in Africa in mid-Feb, it took about 100 days for the cases to reach 100,000, and then after that, in about 20 days, it has reached again another 100,000. When you can see that kind of spread has affected a lot, and especially with the governments putting on various measures of maintaining, and that's the African governments, this standing strong. So a number of things have been affected because, like in the restrictions on movement, restrictions of gathering, restrictions that affects the work we do with the partners and public-private partnerships that we do carry out. People cannot go to the fields. The scientists cannot attend to the research in the field. We are working together. There is a shortage of labor since people are not allowed to move from some places to other places. So depending on the various restrictions the governments have put on, our work has been affected very heavily. Our work depends on partners, and we are technology transfer organization, where we are introducing appropriate agricultural technologies to farmers through partnerships. So it has been affected gradually.
Right, and of course the impact is widespread, many people not able to go ahead with the operations as normal. But let's talk about the situation that we find ourselves as a region, especially the Horn of Africa. Where would you rate us in terms of food security, bearing in mind the challenges we've been having of the locust invasion, the perennial flooding, the perennial droughts, and now COVID-19?
Yeah, to generalize sometimes is not the best, but it depends on countries specifically. But looking at the Horn of Africa, the situation of food security has been improving in the last 10 years, in the last 1 decade. But of course, there is still malnutrition. It is in the papers, it is quoted 1 in every 5 or 1 in every 10 adults and 1 in every 5 children is malnutrition. But, that the governments have been addressing that, but then it has been worsened again by these pests, the invasive pests that come in, like locusts. In fact, it is estimated about $8.1 billion is likely to be lost, to crops and livestock if this locust pandemic also continues. So, and there are other challenges like the fall armyworm. So while there's been improvement in productivity, these new challenging pests and diseases do affect food security.
Right, obviously they will affect, but now let me ask you this question, because you said that it's not fine, it's not proper to generalize, but when you look at the response that governments of this region have been having against the locusts, how would you rate it in terms of the performance that we've been able to either to contain or the situation has gotten out of hand?
No, it has been able to be contained. There are several measures that have been taken up, the cooperation of the regional countries, the support of the other partners abroad, and the spraying of these locusts, and also the weather. When it has been raining so much, the locusts don't damage as much as when it is so warm. So I would say with concerted effort, there's very great means to control them.
And Daktari, we know from statistics that up to 40% of the population in the Sub-Saharan Africa are people that would be termed as food insecure. What do you think in terms of agricultural technology needs to be done to be in a position to feed the people at a time that the population continues to grow at a higher rate than how our productivity is growing?
Yeah, actually, the figures, those which are quoted, if you have to check on the latest ones, there's a lot of improvement. But one thing we must accept, there must be, first of all, government support in terms of policy and regulations that support, the use of science, technology, and innovation, and bringing on board agricultural technologies that improve crop productivity. And now that we have even challenges of climate change, there are a number of products already developed by African scientists, like climate smart maize varieties, drought tolerant varieties that stand pests and diseases. So the situation, there is enough of the technology to be used. So it's only that the environment be favorable to have them promoted.
And Dr. I'm sure you appreciate the importance of agriculture, especially in the African countries like the region that we are in. And if you look at how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected businesses, it would appear that what remains productive could be agriculture, but still there are challenges in accessing the markets. So what would be your thoughts in improving this access to markets and ensuring that people are able to access proper and good food, good quality food?
The good thing, I'm glad that, and thanks to the governments, they have taken up agriculture and the agricultural inputs as essential services. So when there are these lockdowns, when there are these curfews and the rest of it, at least as long as you are involved, say, for example, in seed production, you are allowed to go to your field to produce seed. The only thing that the COVID-19 has affected is a number of people, of course, are not working, they are staying at home, and the purchasing power is low. So as the government's going easing this situation of the lockdowns and the rest, at least we'll improve a bit on the markets. But at the moment, that is being challenged by the current situation.
Well, that's interesting that you should say that. But let me ask you, when you're focusing on improving technologies, obviously, yes, you want more productivity, but at the same time to benefit the farmers. Do you think the current situation, the current COVID-19 pandemic, and yes, the farmers and delivery of products being considered an essential service, do you think it has been of benefit or to the detriment impact to farmers, especially when it comes to the value they're getting from their sales?
It has had some effect, but you know, when you are to see, at least there has been some regulations of having them. Some of these, like the markets, you know, keeping social distancing has been encouraged. You know, the hygiene, the government guidelines that have been put in place. So the people, it is to a varying degree, if I may say. In some cases, it has been severely affected. In others, things are moving on, but not to the best that should have been. And also, in addition to that, you know, a number of African countries depend on importation, but now there has been restriction of travel, so a number of things have, you know, been not coming in as they should have been. And I'm glad also the governments are focusing to see how they can be self-reliant on this area.
All right, Dr. As we conclude, so the African Agricultural Technology Foundation, what would you think are the quick wins for you in as far as making impact, especially at a time like now that so many things are being revolutionized because of the pandemic?
We have to adjust, you know, new and novel technologies that are able to increase productivity very fast, and we have crops that are, you know, drought tolerant, that are able to stand some of these new diseases like the fall armyworm. So we are positioned, and that is our area of introducing technologies into Africa. So we are well positioned to work with our partners all over to see that at least we maintain and increase food productivity and contribute to creating wealth and health to the families and African farmers.
And so any final thoughts in as far as speaking to the farmers that would benefit from some of your advice or services?
My final thought here is to request that the governments put the proper enabling environment to enable these farmers amidst this COVID-19 to see how we can live with it in maintaining the health guidelines, but also accessing food so that people are able to live in their normal lives.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Dennis Kietere from the African Agricultural Technology Foundation. Of course, this is a foundation that goes ahead to improve how agriculture is being conducted, especially technology-wise, in some 13 countries in the East, Southern, and West Africa. Thank you so much, Dr.